Question: what do these 3 finishers have in common? Answer: they are all non-canon, which means although you can see them happen, they don't matter in the grand scheme of the story. Death, in general, happens a lot in games, from 8-bit to 16-bit to even text-based games. And then there's Mortal Kombat, where as much as death happens in canon, it happens even more in non-canon. I posted a video not too long ago covering every canonical death in the series, which already needs an update by the way. But what about the deaths that aren't canon? You know, weird endings and what-if scenarios where a character dies and you think it could be real, but the next game arrives and that character is back, confirming that ending wasn't canon. That happens at an incredible rate in this series, and I'm accepting the seemingly impossible mission to examine the many non-canon endings and lore to see how many times characters have eliminated others and how many times they've perished themselves.
We are many, you are but...
This video will cover the entire series, so this is about to be crazy. Could Reptile or Baraka be the kings of non-canon? Probably not.
I will tear your flesh.
But anyway, we have a lot to cover, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the many non-canon deaths of Mortal Kombat characters. But first...
You weak, pathetic fool. All too easy.
I do have a few rules before we get started. First and foremost, whether something qualifies as a death or not comes down to my judgment, and I'm gonna do my best to make sense of all the ones that I do count. But I'm not making any promises. The main thing for me is the word defeat, which will become a recurring theme throughout the video. I feel as though the word defeat does not necessarily mean to eliminate. It's almost like at the end of any fight in any Mortal Kombat game. You can either do a fatality or just let the opponent flop to the ground. To me, a defeat is that flop to the ground, but there are some instances where I think a defeat is actually an elimination. Second, I will only count an elimination on a boss character if that's what's meant to happen in that game. For example, Shao Kahn doesn't die in either MK2 or MK3 despite the ending animation, nor does Onaga in Deception, while Blaze and Dark Khan die at the end of their respective games. The boss thing I'll explain further in a little bit. And finally, I'm not going to cover the Malibu comics or MKX comics because I'd rather just stick to the games. Hopefully that all makes sense. If it doesn't, I apologize, but let's go. Honestly, from a story perspective, MK 1992 is either the most tame or one of the most unhinged of the entire series. I considered counting 12 deaths for Goro and Shang Tsung, as both could theoretically die when defeated by other characters. But the thing is, the non-canon endings usually just say defeated, and since both characters eventually return down the line, I'm gonna leave them off. I hope that makes sense, but unless it explicitly says the character in question ended the boss and or sub-boss, or I see irrefutable evidence that the boss and or sub-boss died, I'm not counting it. On that note, the only non-canon deaths I'm counting come from Raiden's ending, where before he was the almighty altruistic source of wisdom,
I must consult with the other gods.
Raiden was kind of an ass.
Then this fight is now personal.
In his ending, it said that he grew bored of fighting mortals and basically hosted a Fortnite match on Earth against other gods. This battle raged on for years, resulting in the world's destruction.
I must consult with...
Fatality. Raiden wins.
Jesus, that got dark fast. Presuming that this game is set in 1992 when it was released, the world's population was approximately 5.477 billion people, all of whom would have perished, giving Raiden a body count that may never be topped. Or could it? Stay tuned to find out. Oh, and have a nice day. That's it for MK 1992, because let's face it, the story wasn't quite there yet, and these characters are fresh out of the box. So let's move on to Mortal Kombat 2, one of my absolute favorites. Alright, so here we have a few non-canon character deaths and another astronomical figure, similar to Raiden in the previous game. You can see the writers get a little more loose with the narrative direction of these endings, specifically with which characters meet their end. Beginning with everyone's favorite Hollywood superstar, Johnny Cage's ending explicitly states, and I quote, he used all his knowledge and experiences as a fighter to end the Outworld menace. Then they made a movie about it, so I think that's reason enough to call this a non-canon death for Shao Kahn and an elimination in favor of Johnny Cage. Perhaps a precursor to what would happen much later in the series. Next up we have Reptile, getting on the board in his first playable appearance before his entire existence would essentially be a joke for years upon years. In this dreamland that is Reptile's ending, the text reads that he defeated Shao Kahn and turned against Shang Tsung, ending his master's scheme. The key word, of course, being ending. I can't imagine that given the revelation of Shang's plans for Reptile's race, he would allow him to live anyway. So this is a safe bet. I'm gonna give Shao Kahn a pass on this one, but Shang Tsung is as good as dead as far as I'm concerned. Raiden is another fighter who increased his already absurd body count in the non-canon version of MK2. His ending states, quote, "Raiden destroys Shao Kahn and all of his minions," unquote. That's good for one additional elimination on the feed because all of his minions could mean anything. Last but not least, we have Shang Tsung, who took a page out of Raiden's book right down to the "have a nice day." His ending reads, and I quote, "Along with his elite group of sorcerers, he uses this weakness to march a never-ending horde of demons onto the earth, and doom its inhabitants to eternal darkness."
Have a nice day!
Considering the Earth's population was roughly 5.565 billion in 1993, and assuming that's when this game took place, Shang has surpassed Raiden on the leaderboard. In summary, as Scream 2 taught us, a sequel was always going to mean an increased body count. However, this is still relatively tame by Mortal Kombat standards. Could MK3/UMK3/trilogy up the ante? I mean, I sure hope so. The non-canon world of MK3 doesn't disappoint from a body count perspective, especially for you Reptile fans out there. He seriously might be the king of non-canon, apart from Raiden and Shang Tsung, of course. Although I can confirm that won't last much longer. Anyway, let's get to it. Speaking of Reptile, we lead off with the Zaterran because he has not one but 2 eliminations in his ending. Upon Shao Kahn ordering him to eliminate Katana, Reptile succeeds? He then learns that Khan had no intentions of resurrecting his extinct race, which enrages Reptile, who eliminates him as well?
What is this?
Quite frankly, I found it outrageous that Reptile got this kind of love in his first 2 endings, especially knowing where it goes from here. But I gotta give it to him, Reptile is thriving in non-canon. Enjoy it while it lasts, bud. Moving on to Scorpion, who sat out MK3 before UMK3. No! We last saw him vowing to protect the second Sub-Zero in his MK2 ending. So, Scorpion gets a list from Shao Kahn of a bunch of warriors he wants eliminated. After seeing young Sub-Zero on that list, Shao Kahn becomes, quote, a victim of his own scheme, when Scorpion betrays him and destroys the Emperor. That's pretty damn definitive to me, so Shao Kahn,
Get over here!
And
Rest in peace.
now getting to Kano, whose ending is admittedly unhinged, which makes perfect sense since he's
Kano.
The Black Dragon member nukes Shao Kahn's armies before defeating Khan himself, which in this case I'm counting as an elimination because the Emperor's many souls leave his body. To round out the quintessential Kano ending, it's rumored that Shao's souls, which Kano wanted to harness, turned against him and led to Kano's violent death. Typical Kano. Equally unhinged is Sector's ending, who terminates Sub-Zero based on his mission parameters. He then proceeds to take aim at Shao Kahn and the Outworld armies. He takes down said armies and presumably the Emperor because, I don't know, he sneaks into Khan's fortress and self-destructs, inadvertently saving Earth in the process. I mean, just imagine.
Sector.
No!
Sector wins.
Nice work, Marines!
The mustard to Sector's ketchup, Cyrax is up next, and he has himself an elimination on Shao Kahn as well. His ending actually reads that he executed a successful sneak attack and eliminated the Emperor before breaking down in Jade's desert. That second part, believe it or not, is canon. But Cyrax eliminating Shao Kahn?
I don't think so.
Listen, this is a bit off topic, but Kung Lao dies in his own MK3 ending. I know it's become a meme, both in general and on this channel, that Kung Lao is a jobber in this series. This just further confirms it in my opinion. And I know it says it's believed he passed away, but the fact remains that even in his own ending, Kung Lao couldn't catch a break. The eventual Prince of Edenia is up next, and there's a lot of fluff in Raiden's ending, but getting down to brass tacks, it reads that he embarked on his own, martyrdom mission to eliminate Shao Kahn. Now, this presumes he completes that mission successfully because otherwise this ending is kind of pointless, so I'm calling it for Raiden.
This will never happen again.
Last but not least, once again, our current leader Shang Tsung steps in to make a case that in this non-canonical universe, he is the most successful villain in the series without a doubt. So this diabolical SOB sniffs out Shao Kahn's plan to take him down once his mission to take over Earthrealm is complete. He defeats Motaro and Shao Kahn, which again, it's Shang Tsung, so I'm counting it. Then he takes all the souls, like every single one. I don't know about you, but for me, it doesn't get more definitive than a sorcerer claiming the souls of everyone on Earth. Alright, now let's look this up. Okay, Shang Tsung might already be untouchable as he adds another 5.737 billion plus 2 to his body count, based on the planet's population in 1995, of course. Before moving on, and this is off topic once again, I have to mention the immense amount of sequel bait present in these endings. Some of them are just like, find out in Mortal Kombat 4, when he returns in Mortal Kombat 4, despite a few of these characters not even appearing in that game. I don't know, I just had to point it out. What do we have next again? Oh, right. Mortal Kombat 4 and Gold feel like an anomaly at times. Not that either is offensively bad or anything, but they came out in between the 2D era and the 3D era. Maybe it's just me, but while they technically are part of the 3D era by definition, I've always felt both games fit more into the 2D era. Although MK4 does trade out text-based screens for these cutting-edge cutscenes that we'll just call experimental. That's a polite way of saying they are hilariously bad. But yeah, let's get to the non-canon deaths of both of these games. Let's begin with Jarek, one of technically 5 brand new characters in this game. It's no secret that he's become a meme over the years as essentially a discount Kano, but in his ending, well, let's just roll the tape.
Never!
Come in, Major Briggs. This is Lieutenant Sonya Blade. What?
Sonya, this is Major Briggs. Come in. Sonya, this is Jax. Are you there?
Believe it or not, Jarek is on the board with an elimination on Sonya. Just imagine if this was a canonical ending, but like, why was he holding on to the cliff like that? I think it's safe to say we're missing some context here. By the way, get used to this image because this isn't the last time we're gonna see it. And just like that, here we are, back at the cliff where Jarek 200 IQ'd Sonya to death. Only this time, Sonya flips the script. Plain and simple, Jarek just looks like a moron here. He sprints towards Sonya, who effortlessly steps aside while Jarek flies off the cliff and makes that noise he makes.
Come in, Major Briggs. This is Lieutenant Sonya Blade. Over.
Sonya, glad to hear you're alive.
You actually sound happy to hear from me, Jax. Things get boring?
Not since you followed Liu Kang into the Netherrealm.
Well, it's over now. I'm returning to base. 10-4, Jax.
On that note, I'd like to welcome Sonya to the elimination feed, but I'm not really sure she even did anything. Next up is Quan Chi, whose ending is semi-canonical, believe it or not. It's at this moment we have confirmation that the amulet he acquired in Mythologies is not the one he gave to Shinnok. He instead created a duplicate and kept a real one for himself. How Shinnok never realized this is another discussion entirely, but in any case, Quan Chi manages to use the correct amulet to explode Shinnok into 1,000,000 pieces.
Ruler Supreme, and you, Elder God, are finished!
I know we learn later that Shinnok actually can't die, but I don't think it gets more definitive than this, so I'm gonna count it. So the Sorcerer is finally on the board with an elimination on his own master. The next non-canon death occurs in Tanya's ending, but she's only a pawn in the situation. She lures Liu Kang into what looks like Goro's lair, claiming that Raiden requested that she do so. Sure enough, who's waiting in this dungeon? It's meat. Nah, I'm just kidding. It's Quan Chi and Shinnok. Just like Quan Chi in the previous ending, Shinnok sends a single energy blast toward Liu Kang, exploding him into 1,000,000 pieces.
Fool.
Shinnok wins. Fatality.
I really started to notice a pattern at this point, but Shinnok gets the ending he probably wished actually happened, with an assist from Tanya. Reptile is up next, and so begins his journey as a jobber. Although it's non-canon, his ending is not even borderline offensive, it's arguably the most offensive of them all. Despite shifting loyalty to Quan Chi and Shinnok from Shao Kahn and Shang Tsung, Syzoth is honestly his own worst enemy. You can't help but feel bad because he just wants his home restored to a time before Shao Kahn destroyed it.
Now I wish to return in time to my home world before it was destroyed at the hands of Shao Kahn. As the new ruler supreme of all reality, Shinnok alone has the power to grant me this wish.
You dare make such an impetuous request from your lord and master?
It is a simple request for one of such great power.
It is also not worth his attention.
Shinnok then appears out of nowhere to confront Reptile and proceeds to explode his head.
You are in no position to demand anything. I could kill you with a mere thought.
But we had a deal.
A deal? I am not a god of my word, Reptile. All deals are off!
All for asking that they restore his home world.
Leave me be.
I'm not sure what's worse, Reptile's misguided loyalty toward villains who clearly don't want to help him, or just the tragedy of him dying so unceremoniously in his own ending. I mean, at least he had a good run up until this point. Moving on to Shinnok's ending, he adds another to his body count, exploding Raiden into 1,000,000 pieces. As I said, I really started to notice a pattern. They seriously ran out of creativity in this game. So yeah, there's some dialogue where Shinnok proclaims superiority while Raiden just hovers before he eliminates him, making that 3 for Shinnok. It's a shame he was unable to keep this same energy through the later games, although he's pretty underrated in Armageddon. Quan Chi has done pretty well for himself up to this point, but it gets much worse here. However, he doesn't die by Kuai Liang's hand, but rather Scorpion's, as it should be. In the latest captivating ending sequence, well, yeah, just roll the tape.
Well done, Sub-Zero. Like your brother before you, you have served my purposes well.
I serve no one, not the Lin Kuei, and not you.
Scorpion agreed to fight for us in exchange for freedom from the Netherrealm. A deal I had no intention of fulfilling. By killing him, you saved us the trouble. Both you and Scorpion were pawns for Shinnok. Scorpion!
Another explosion, huh? Well, there you have it. Scorpion is the one to take Quan Chi's life and Sub-Zero's ending, which frees Sub-Zero from Scorpion's curse. All things considered, this one's actually not that bad. That covers all of Mortal Kombat 4, but not so fast because the Dreamcast exclusive Mortal Kombat Gold added more characters, which means more non-canonical endings. There's no better place to start than with this piece of absolute cinema starring Sector, Sonya, Cyrax, and Jax. We all know how Cyrax's ending goes, with him finding his humanity once again and joining the Outworld Investigation Agency.
I instead choose to fight at your side for Earth.
Sector starts similar to that, with Jax and Sonya hoping to restore Cyrax's human psyche. The only difference is this part, where Sector walks into the room and nukes everyone in sight.
Mission completed.
This might be the most unhinged ending yet that doesn't include exterminating the entire world's population, but honestly, on brand for Sector. I'm gonna roll the clip once more before we move on, because dear lord.
What?
I can't believe they did that. It doesn't even feel real.
Triple kill.
Although a tough act to follow, the next non-canonical ending brings us into the Edenian throne room, where Kitana gazes out a window. A wild Mileena emerges out of nowhere and declares her desire to become the Princess of Edenia.
I want to be Princess of Edenia.
Kitana tells her dear sister how it is, saying,
You have no right. You are not my sister.
Mileena then hits her with a vicious uppercut before blasting her with a sigh, sending her out said window upon which she was gazing. What the f am I even writing? So yeah, for once in her torturous, evil, science experiment life, Mileena gets one up on Kitana and becomes the Princess of Edenia by default, I guess. All things considered, this ending is pretty solid, and I can't speak from personal experience, but there's no way anyone who beat this game with Mileena thought this would hold up. What better way to round out these two games than with Mileena's Tarkatan cohort, Baraka. Making his first appearance in this video, his ending informs the audience that apparently everyone is dead.
Everyone is dead.
Yes.
Leaving only Quan Chi and Baraka to rule
Dead realm with a madman.
Baraka doesn't exactly take this news kindly. He draws his blade and lunges at Quan Chi, ending the sorcerer once and for all. That's it. That's the end of it. No, it actually wasn't. I wish it was, but it turns out the Quan Chi Baraka executed was a clone. The real Quan Chi stands up and freezes a lunging Baraka in midair before, you guessed it, exploding him. So, congratulations, Baraka.
You played yourself.
Damn, Midway really hated Reptile and Baraka. Here's a look at the final kill feed for Mortal Kombat 4 and Mortal Kombat Gold. And before we move forward, here's the updated scoreboard across all titles so far. We're gonna take a brief detour out of the mainline games and cover the entirely non-canon MK Special Forces, which is just, well, let's just get to it, huh? Alright, I'm not gonna spend too much time on this game for obvious reasons, but I'm pretty sure we have 5 confirmed non-canon eliminations for Jax. Those include No Face.
Yeah, I'm okay. I just had a little fire to snuff out.
Tazia.
Oh yeah. I just got in a close shave with a twin-bladed honey. Too bad I had to take her out though.
Jarek.
Did you happen to run into any more of Kano's henchmen?
Nothing I couldn't handle. Just some punk with a sharp toy.
Tremor.
It appears to be some sort of portal to another dimension. God only knows where it's going to take me.
And finally, Kano.
Oh yeah.
So during his solo adventure, as disappointing as it was, Jax added 5 much-needed eliminations to his overall score, tying him with Sector for the time being.
Oh yeah.
With that game behind us, we move further into the 3D era, where the hilariously bad cutscenes are no more, instead shifting back to screens with narrated text. I'm of course referring to
Deadly Alliance.
Deadly Alliance took the series in an incredibly dark direction with one snap of the neck. Shao Kahn also presumably lost his life, but that wouldn't last because the devs realized eliminating the series' best villain was a bad idea. Either way, these two decisions elevated Shang Tsung and Quan Chi, also known as the
Deadly Alliance,
to primary boss status. But how did the alternate non-canonical universe play out in this game? Let's find out. At this point in the series, Raiden was one of the last remaining beacons of hope for Earthrealm. Interestingly enough, his ending in Deadly Alliance certainly implies that he took down both members.
The Deadly Alliance is no more.
Although there's no visual evidence, I'm gonna take Raiden's word for it and say that he earned himself a
double kill
en route to returning to his previous position as the
God of Thunder.
Moving on to the second half of the Shaolin monk duo, the one that didn't have his neck snapped, at least not yet. Kung Lao had more motivation than arguably anyone else on the roster to eradicate the Deadly Alliance. His closest friend and borderline brother Liu Kang had his life and soul taken, so what does he do? He returns the favor. In his non-canon ending, Kung Lao dispatches Shang Tsung, bringing him to the point of begging for mercy, but, and I quote,
Kung Lao granted him none.
Nothing explicitly states that he eliminated Quan Chi, so perhaps he was beaten down but managed to escape. With that said, I'm confidently crediting Kung Lao with Shang Tsung's death. You piece of sh**. Alright, Shang Tsung is just getting farmed at this point because we get more of the same in Kenchi's ending. It reveals that Shang manipulated Kenchi into releasing the souls of his ancestors, which the sorcerer then took for himself. This left Kenchi blinded, but his quest for vengeance led him right back to Shang, whom he cut down, leading to the souls within him being freed. Those souls re-entered the sword, which would eventually become known as Sento, and as you can see, I'd say this is a definitive death for Shang Tsung. It's also kind of on par with Kung Lao's ending, where it's shockingly emotional. In a similar vein to Jarek, Kano accomplished his seemingly lifelong goal of taking down Sonya Blade in his Deadly Alliance ending. Kano effectively replaced Jarek because was not exactly a good look. His ending tells the fictional story of Kano stealing Shinnok's amulet from Quan Chi and giving it to Shang Tsung. However, he never gave it to Shang. He instead reanimated the Dragon Army himself and used it to eliminate Sonya Blade,
ending their long rivalry once and for all.
His level of hatred towards Sonya is otherworldly. Kano is Kano, but you have to respect how far he went to maintain his villain status. Shang Tsung's ending. About what you'd expect. He and Quan were successful in defeating all of their adversaries and were able to reanimate the Dragon Army. This is where everything goes off the rails because it ties directly into Kano's equally non-canon ending. So, Shang Tsung fears Quan Chi will betray him, which is fair. So he instructs Kano to steal the amulet because the army would obey only he who holds the amulet. This plan succeeds, resulting in Quan Chi's death and Shang Tsung being the last one standing. Presumably with Kano beside him, I guess? As I said, no surprises here apart from Kano potentially, but were Shang and Quan ever gonna work long term?
I don't think so.
Quan Chi's ending is also about what you'd expect, but with a little twist. After Shang Tsung transferred the final soul into the Dragon Army soldiers, Quan shut off Shang's access to the seemingly infinite supply of souls. Kano then sprang into action, fatally wounding Shang Tsung. Since Kano just turned on Shang, Quan Chi acknowledges that the same could happen to him. He proceeds to suck Kano's soul.
That's your last go at me.
And here's the other twist. He replaces Kano's soul with Liu Kang's, meaning Liu Kang has effectively possessed Kano's body.
By the Elder Gods.
Okay, I take that back. This is not what I expected, or at least not up until Liu Kang becomes Kano, because that's just outrageous. Part of me would love to see the alternate universe where this became canon, but for now, we'll credit one elimination to Kano on Shang Tsung, another to Quan Chi on Kano, and hey, why not credit Quan Chi with a revive? That seems fair enough to me. Most of these have been pretty straightforward, but some have been strangely emotional. I think we could classify Li Mei's ending under the second category. She falls into the same trap that Reptile experienced for legitimately 4 consecutive games. Li Mei made it through the grueling tournament hosted by the
Deadly Alliance,
under the impression that both would free her people from enslavement. Yeah, they didn't do that. They instead realized that they just so happened to need one more soul to complete the Dragon Army, and they bestowed that honor upon her. so Quan and Shang enslaved her to serve them in the Dragon Army, presumably for all eternity.
Cursed to serve the deadly alliance forever.
Damn, that's a grim ending. I got nothing else to say. It's just dark as hell. The final character we're covering in this game is surprisingly not a casualty involving either member of the Deadly Alliance. Instead, Goro's dead in Kitana's ending for some reason. Unless I missed something, I must have overlooked something, because last we saw him, he agreed to a peace treaty with the Centaurians and formed an alliance with the Edenians. It could be related to Noob Saibot's ending in Tournament Edition, but that's also canon, so I'm not sure on this one. Unfortunately, that means we don't have an elimination to credit here, so here's the latest update to the feed. And here's the updated leaderboard. The next game is of course the beloved Mortal Kombat Deception, which introduced many new characters, including one of the best protagonists and antagonists in all of Mortal Kombat history.
I was the fool who brought him this power. Only I can destroy this threat, born of deception.
In case it wasn't clear in the previous game, the Dragon King is here, and he's here to fuck shit up. But that also means he's here to get fucked up. And don't worry, that happens quite a bit, but let's not get ahead of ourselves and instead get to what happens with this disruption. You may have caught a glimpse of this in the intro, but Tanya presumably experiences one of the more painful deaths in the series in Jade's ending. This is some generational hatred out of Jade, but it's for good reason, especially considering the whole Shinnok thing. To make it even worse, Tanya aided Onaga and helped him assemble the Kamidogu. So Jade purposely got herself captured and taken prisoner by Tanya and the Tarkatans. She then threw a glass of Tarkata essence at Tanya, which broke and led the Tarkatans to attack. Now, Shujeko says,
I doubt she survived the encounter.
That could be enough reasonable doubt not to include this one, but I just don't see how she could have survived. Kenshi and Sub-Zero aren't the duo I thought I needed, but they are the stars in Kenshi's ending. While trying to stay hidden in Outworld on their way back to Earthrealm, a wild Hotaru appears out of nowhere and temporarily blinds Sub-Zero with a beam of light. We of course know that's no issue for Kenshi. As Hotaru attempts to deliver the fatal blow to Sub-Zero, Kenshi utilizes the shadows to brutally slice Hotaru in half from head to groin. Such a vicious yet satisfying end to Hotaru. Absolutely brutal. Next up is Scorpion, who I'm realizing could have made a great protagonist in this game if the devs decided to go that route. His ending reveals that the Elder Gods essentially transformed him into a machine, programming him to hunt down and destroy the Dragon King. Sure enough, Scorpion locates Onaga in the Nexus and makes quick work of his Tarkatan army. Then, by the looks of it, he like Superman dives directly through Onaga's chest cavity in yet another brutal ending. The anatomy going on here is a little unclear, but hey, an elimination is an elimination. And this one is absolute cinema. Moving on to Mileena, her ending is another interesting one because it's semi-canonical. The part that's true to the lore is that Mileena aligned herself with Onaga and posed as Kitana in her absence while she served the Dragon King against her will. Despite being freed by Baraka from captivity in the first place, Mileena betrays him and the Tarkatans. Posing as Kitana, she instructs Bo-Raicho's forces to attack the Tarkatans, which proves successful. With Baraka being the only one to know Mileena was pretending to be Kitana, she ultimately feeds him to a swarm of flesh-eating insects in the beetle lair.
All hail, Princess Kitana.
This game seriously ain't pulling any punches, and it's yet another tragic ending for Baraka. Don't worry though, because this isn't over. Justice for Baraka would arrive just one ending later in his own ending, but this is where the story gets a little weird. It ties directly back to Mileena's ending with the whole flesh-eating beetles ordeal. However, Baraka's ending adds a plot twist where he was well aware that the meeting by the flesh-eating insect pit was a clear trap. Well done. So he sent a proxy in his place. Baraka then allowed Sub-Zero's forces to launch an attack against Mileena's forces while Baraka hunted her down by scent. He proceeds to chop her in half at the waist, ending their unexpected rivalry right then and there. Although confusing, these two eliminations still count as both endings exist in their own non-canon context. Next we have Sindel, and this one's a little confusing, so stick with me. Jade and Sindel found their way into Onaga's original resting place. Upon opening his sarcophagus, they discovered his mummified remains since he possessed Reptile in the previous game. While learning an ancient incantation inscribed on a pillar beside the sarcophagus, Onaga emerged alongside brainwashed Kitana. Instead of doing the deed himself, the Dragon King instructs Kitana to eliminate Jade and Sindel. As Jade fought Kitana, Sindel drove her Quan Do into Onaga's original corpse and recited the incantation. Onaga's soul then returns to its original body but mortally wounded, ensuring he'd return to the
cold sleep of death.
This just might be peak Sindel from a non-canon standpoint, because taking down Onaga the way she did is incredible. I'm willing to bet that didn't go in the direction you thought it would. And I think that same sentiment applies to the next one, because the newly dark Raiden just elevates to another level of evil, I guess, but he also kind of has a point. He basically dumps all over Shujinko's entire plotline where Onaga deceived him as Damashi, calling him, quote,
an unknowing tool of a greater evil.
Raiden didn't care whatsoever that he fixed his mistake and eliminated Onaga. He proceeds to shock and presumably end Shujinko's life based on this image. I suppose there's no proof per se, but this ending is crazy and shows the true extent of Dark Raiden as a character. Also, like I said, he's not wrong. Not a death or an elimination in the traditional sense, but Li Mei, have some self-respect. Despite fighting for the good guys, she becomes Onaga's queen after reaching an understanding regarding which side should win. So not a death to a character, but definitely to Li Mei's dignity. The fan-favorite 3D era darling Havik is up next, and it's about as insane as you could possibly imagine with this character. You might think that he probably took Onaga's life and became a ruler of some sort, but oh no. It's a little different than that. Havik's ending states that, quote,
the others had defeated the Dragon King.
But who the culprits are is a genuine mystery. Standing over a deceased Onaga, Havik takes a page out of Kano's book and rips out his heart. This allows him to reanimate the dead, which he does, by bringing back Shao f***ing Kahn. So, no eliminations for Havik here, but let's credit him with a revive because why not? Alright, I'm gonna brace myself for this next one because my analysis could have the comment section coming after my neck. Cabal's ending ties directly in with Havik's, who we previously saw remove Onaga's heart. However, rather than reanimating Shao Kahn, it appears Cabal was just off screen had the camera panned a little off to the side. After removing said heart, Cabal slays the diabolical resident of Chaos Realm to take the heart for himself. It says slew right here, which is the past tense of slain, and Havik found this impressive. So for those of you saying that Havik can't die, that's perfectly fine. I didn't write it, but I am counting it. The next one is legendary and perhaps the turning point in Mortal Kombat history for these two characters, Noob Saibot and Sub-Zero. Oh yeah, Smoke's here too. But most of you probably remember how this one goes. In this ending, Noob and Smoke encounter the second Sub-Zero introduced in the series. It's at this point that, for the first time ever, we learn that Noob Saibot was the first Sub-Zero who eventually fell victim to a vengeful scorpion. His soul taken, Bi-Han embraced the shadows and became this Wraith, now partnered with Smoke, another from Sub-Zero's past. Now this ending is semi-canon, with the non-canon aspect being Sub-Zero's death at the hands of Noob Smoke. So there you have it, another interesting direction the series could have taken, but I think I speak for everyone when I say I'm glad they didn't. Long live Sub-Zero. Next on the growing list of characters to take down the Dragon King is Tanya, and this one is not deep. Feigning loyalty, Tanya basically blindsides Onaga after he fuses the Kamidogu. The ending explicitly states that she destroyed Onaga, and I mean, the evidence is right there. There's not much else to say. Good job, Tanya. Circling back to this rivalry that emerged seemingly out of nowhere, we have Hotaru and Sub-Zero starring in the former's non-canon ending. Like the last one, this one is just whatever. Apparently Hotaru's entire identity is eliminating Sub-Zero in this game, which he does. Oh, and he also takes out Kenshi considering he's holding Kenshi's severed head.
Double kill.
And rounding out this trio of underwhelming endings is Dairu, another member of Order Realm. His ending tells the story of him announcing his intentions to neutralize Hotaru. He succeeds, and although it teases that someone ordered this hit, we never find out who or why. The final ending we have in MK Deception proper brings us to Kira of the Black Dragon clan. This one depicts Cabal, Kira, and Cobra, who have taken down Havoc's last remaining enemies. Cobra and Kira then 1v1 each other to determine who would become an official member of the Black Dragon. In true Cobra fashion, he loses his life to Kira, who then receives the honor of finding 2 additional members for the Black Dragon. Perhaps Billy and Stu? If you know, you know.
Is that you, Billy? Of course it is, Stu.
So Cobra squandered potentially his only opportunity to see his name in the feed. The final 2.5 endings we're covering actually come from Mortal Kombat Unchained, the handheld version of Deception. First up is Jax, whose bio explains that Onaga had him under mind control. He swore that he would pursue Onaga after Liu Kang rescued him. His ending brings that setup full circle, as despite possessing the powers of all these fighters, Shujiko didn't possess Jax's raw aggression. He beats the ever-loving piss out of Onaga, and I'm presuming this led to his death, although it's not technically spoken.
Oh yeah.
Next is Shao Kahn, who returned in Unchained. This is where we learn that Shao Kahn didn't die at the hands of the Deadly Alliance, and it was apparently a plot-convenient decoy. Anyway, this ending appears to be semi-canon, but that might only be in the sense that Shao Kahn and Goro reunited and would eventually reclaim Outworld. The non-canon implications occur in the fact that the pair confronts and defeats Onaga in a 1v2. Vintage Shao Kahn smashes him with his hammer, followed by Goro stabbing the Dragon King with poisoned blades. This seems like it should only be credited to Goro, but I'm gonna award the elimination to both. The poison strikes once again. One last thing is at least 2 more nameless Tarkatans dead at the hands of Goro in his ending. Here's the final elimination feed for Deception, and it's by far the busiest of the games we've covered so far. And here's the updated leaderboard. Let's take a break from the main non-canon in the next game as we switch to Shaolin Monks, where canon basically doesn't exist. Perhaps the most significant non-canon story in the Mortal Kombat series is Shaolin Monks. As we've covered in the past, this game is an alternate retelling of Mortal Kombat 2. However, it centers around Liu Kang and Kung Lao, the titular Shaolin monks. So this is a serious advantage for those two and a couple of others, as you'll see shortly. Also, just for reference, I know you can play through the entire game as Scorpion and Sub-Zero and reenact these events, but it doesn't feel the same to me. Mainly because the story doesn't change. You can count those however you'd like, but I won't be considering them overall.
I believe that I will be of great assistance to Liu Kang.
The first round of deaths and eliminations happened during the intro, which is honestly one of the best intros of all Mortal Kombat games. So Kung Lao beheads this random Tarkatan before Sub-Zero rips out this random guard's spine. Later on, getting to the actual game, Johnny Cage uppercuts this random monster into the pit. These monsters then eat and decimate this random other monster. 2 random monsters die from this falling rock on the pit bridge. Later on, after the ceremony, the invading Tarkatans terminate this monk with this payload during an attack. More Tarkatans then eat this random monk. This Tarkatan uppercuts a random monk into this catapult, which then activates. This random guard dies to a rolling payload. I'm pretty sure a Tarkatan and a guard die to a rolling payload here. Baraka then terminates this random monk before capturing Sonya. A little later on, while on this wall, Kung Lao takes down roughly 5 Tarkatans with molten steel, and Liu Kang takes out 6. Raiden then eliminates 2 Tarkatans himself right here. Okay, I'm pretty sure that covers the random NPC deaths up to this point, so let's get to the more popular characters. Jade's up first, and this one still blows my mind. Depending on who you play as, either Liu Kang or Kung Lao will stab Melina's size directly into Jade's eye sockets. I would say Katana reacts appropriately given the situation, but good god.
Jade? You killed her. She was my best friend and you killed her. Don't touch me. I should destroy you for killing Jade.
She tried to kill us. I'm sorry.
That's an elimination for both of them. Next is Reptile, in an elimination that again counts for both Shaolin monks. He eventually meets his maker after having his jaw ripped open, followed by a relentless beating, and finally, the Liu Kang / Kung Lao classic. So,
broken freaking neck!
A little later on, Baraka destroys this random monk, followed by either of the 2 Shaolin monks asking,
"Are you okay?" okay?
Which never fails to make me laugh. Baraka's death is one of the more elaborate ones I've seen, where the fight has several cutscenes and he ends up with a bunch of swords in him. He also has these souls attacking him until he does the MK4 classic. That's another 2 for the boys. Moving further into the game, Goro's death follows a hard-fought battle between him and one of the 2 Shaolin. However, neither of them ultimately earn the elimination. Instead, Johnny Cage arrives out of nowhere and does the classic move from any Call of Duty game ever. He steals the kill by kicking Goro through his abdomen. Man, you stole my kill! He even winked at the camera as if speaking to me while creating this video. Scorpion's death is another weird one worth discussing because can he really die? I mean, I counted the non-Hanzo Scorpion once in the many deaths of Mortal Kombat characters video. But he and one of the Shaolin are fighting in presumably Hell or the Netherrealm. And during his supposed death, Scorpion gives the iconic Terminator 2 thumbs up as he falls deeper into the lava. Like I said, this is another one I'll need your opinion on, so let me know in the comments, but I'm not going to count this one because I don't think he dies here. And what might be the most bizarre twist of fate of this entire game, a fight with Ermac follows Scorpion's presumed death and a nice nod to the rumor that Ermac existed in the earlier games. Anyway, after a lengthy battle with either Shaolin monk, Ermac and the many souls harbored within him succumb to a boulder. Or I guess technically part of a column, but it's a boulder. Now, I cannot even begin to imagine how many deaths this could be realistically.
We are many.
So I'm counting it as just 1. And I'll just say, I'm surprised this isn't more of a meme in the MK community. As the game winds down, Major Jackson Briggs gets an elimination on the board here following a fight with Kano. This occurs in a dungeon located within Khan's Coliseum in yet another nod to the original game. Liu and Lao rescue Sonya, who is being held prisoner alongside Kano. At the end of the fight, Jax delivers a skull-crushing punch to Kano's head before a rising platform crushes him. It's another all-timer. Shang Tsung is up next just like the OG MK2 battle plan, and no matter how you look at it, this death would eventually, or is already at this point, poetic. After defeating the sorcerer, either Liu or Lao snaps his neck. No doubt a nod to Liu Kang's fate a few games prior. It's evident at this point that no one's neck is safe in this universe, especially if your name is Liu Kang or Kung Lao. Of all the deaths in this game, Jade included, I don't think I felt bad for any of the characters more than Kentaro. He barely ever gets to shine in the series, and Shaolin Monks is no different. One of the 2 characters rips off all 4 of his arms and then his head before his body just falls off of whatever platform they're fighting on. That's just brutal, man. I'm a huge Kentaro fan, so that death kind of hit me on a personal level. I don't know. Let's just move on. And the final death of this game belongs to, you guessed it, Emperor Shao Kahn. And you might think this is straightforward. A few punches, kicks, maybe a fireball or a hat, and boom. But there's an unexpected swerve here, where Raiden plays a sizable role in Kahn's death. Echoing Johnny Cage from earlier, Raiden's music plays, he arrives and shocks Shao Kahn, which turns him to stone. The Shaolin monks then simultaneously shatter the stone statue, ending him in this alternate universe. I honestly forgot how crazy this game was, especially with the elaborate deaths. Like, Ermac getting crushed by a rock is probably something we'll never see again. Except for Mortal Kombat X. And Mortal Kombat 1. Alright, forget it. Some of these deaths did feel unwarranted. Basically Jade and Kentaro, but I get it, it's Mortal Kombat.
Are you okay?
In any case, here's the final elimination feed for this game. And here's an updated look at the big board. Now we move to potentially the most daunting task of this entire journey. Mortal Kombat Armageddon. Listen, there are 63 characters in this game, and the endings provide nothing beyond some martial arts poses, so there isn't much here. This isn't like Deadly Alliance or Deception, where we have actual visual evidence of what happens. A good example of these endings working against me is that there are a few instances where a character absorbs Blaze's power and conquers realms. Unfortunately, there's just no way to quantify how many people may have perished in these cases, so I did my best. I'm gonna run through these faster than normal just because there's nothing really to show. Here we go.
Armageddon has begun.
Baraka kicks us off dispatching Onaga and Shao Kahn after giving them a choice to submit to him, an offer they decline. Blaze evidently welcomed all challengers only to take down every single one of them. I think the tricky part here is to figure out whether Blaze eliminated himself, which would technically have to happen based on the ladder structure. I'm just gonna say he didn't though, but I do have to consider the 5 characters I believe perished before reaching the top of the pyramid. Those being Li Mei, Stryker, Shiva, Kenshi, and Shang Tsung. So I'm gonna say that's 57 eliminations for Blaze. Draman's ending says he basically went crazy and defeated Moloch, but he doesn't strike me as the kind of character to leave a job unfinished, so I'm calling it. Frost's ending says her army of cryomancers conquered the realms, leaving each of them a frozen wasteland. This is a good example of an ending I have no idea how to quantify. Goro goes absolutely nuclear in his ending, taking down Shang Tsung, Quan Chi, Shao Kahn, and Onaga with his army of Shokan. Now, there's an argument to be made that Goro didn't end any of them, but I think of it almost as a kill streak in Call of Duty. Although you aren't the one flying the lightning strike, for example, you still get credit for the kills. Hopefully that makes sense. The fan favorite Suhao apparently is so bad that he couldn't even contain Blaze's power, so he just dies and becomes a demon. I'm counting another one for Blaze here because that's just Suhao in a nutshell. Jarek's story is one of the more interesting I came across because in the way that it's told, it seems he eliminated everyone in the general area of the pyramid. However, it explicitly highlights Sub-Zero, Kano, Jax, and Kung Lao, adding,
Jarek had finished them all.
This phrasing could certainly mean he took down everyone, but again, Armageddon ending, so I'm just gonna count the 4 here. Jax's ending says he defeated Sector and took control of the Takunin after Blaze's essence turned him full cyborg. I know my defeated rule should technically be in effect, but I just feel there's no way a cyborg Jax would allow Sector to live after usurping him in his own group, so I'm counting it. Johnny Cage experiences a metaphorical death, if you will, becoming enlightened and renouncing his previous life as an actor. Cabal's ending definitely stands out in Armageddon because he and Mavado fight each other, and Mavado is so inferior that he self-terminates before Cabal holds his head up high. I love that for Cabal. Kentaro's ending should please the Kentaro fanbase as he slays Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Havoc, and Hotaru to make swords Kentaro can use for eternity. That's metal as f***, and probably the last time Kentaro got the love he deserves in this series. Cobra gets his much-needed revenge on Kira in Kira's own ending, where she revives him after he perishes during the Battle of Armageddon. He then somehow inherits Blaze's power and devours her life force. So this is what we call the Reptile Classic, where Kira dies in her own ending. Cobra's up next, and it's basically more of the same except with a role reversal. His ending explains that he chose Kira to rule at his side as the
Goddess of Death.
After planting a kiss on the Ken Masters lookalike, he disintegrates into dust.
And reduced his body to dust.
You can't make this up. Liu Kang's is a 50-50 ending for me because we have the dreaded D word yet again. The ending of course states that he defeated Raiden and replaced him as protector of Earthrealm. Zombie or no zombie, I'm not sure that I'd buy Liu Kang destroying Raiden like that. I think the two had a fair fight and Liu Kang won, so no deaths here. Unrelated to the whole death/elimination thing, Meat's ending literally says he
disappeared into obscurity.
And that just makes me sad. Mocap's ending is another weird one. It says Blaze's destruction
killed all those present at the final battle.
So do we credit that to Mocap or Blaze? I'm somewhat hesitant to say Mocap, but it has to be him, right? He destroyed Blaze in this context, thus wiping out everyone present, apart from Li Mei, Stryker, Shiva, Kenshi, and Shang Tsung. Then he sadly, tragically dies, so I guess we could call it 57 for Mocap, which is something I genuinely didn't think was possible. Not an elimination, but we absolutely have another to add to the revive feed in Nightwolf's ending. He becomes a living ghost and locates Liu Kang in the spirit realm before eventually reuniting his spirit with his physical body. Next is Raiden, and another ending that's impossible to quantify, but I have to cover it. At least in the earlier games, there were no known realms beyond Earthrealm and Outworld, which makes this so tricky. His ending states that he destroyed all realms except for Earthrealm. Unfortunately, despite my efforts, there are no known populations for any realms at this point in the series. Therefore, I can't add to his already astronomical number because it's just out of my control. Every part of me arrived at Reiko's ending and prayed that maybe he ended Shao Kahn and took his helmet.
Tell him I will no longer enter his chamber or wear his helmet. But just between us, his helmet will belong to me in due time.
Much to my dismay, that actually happened, except he didn't take Shao's life based on the wording. Once again, it says defeated, and despite the inconsistency of that rule at this point in the video, I feel that Reiko is so fond of Shao that he would leave him alive. He really is Shao Kahn's biggest fan.
Oh, Shao Kahn knows about that?
Slithering on over to Reptile, he's another who manages not to take a single life despite acquiring Blaze's power. He instead witnesses the emergence of a sarcophagus. Contained within is a female Zaterran, whom I can only assume Reptile plans to mate with to preserve their race, I think. It doesn't state outright that he revived her, but it's implied, so I'm counting it. Plus, I mean, he has Blaze's power. Alright, we have another Raiden situation with Shiva, whose ending says that she laid waste to the realms one by one. I just have no earthly idea how to quantify that, so I'm just gonna have to pass on Shiva for this one. Despite getting yeeted off the pyramid, Shujinko's ending explains that he made it to the top and defeated Blaze. He then drew chi from each fighter, which is precisely what led to Onaga's demise in the previous game. However, in an unexpected twist, Shujinko slayed everyone present before vowing to conquer the Elder Gods. That's another shocking 57 eliminations for the hero of MK Deception to match mocap. This is some elite level fan fiction. Sindel is yet another to experience an ending with no eliminations and one revive. That revive just so happens to be her late husband Jared, who got Shao Kahn'd many years prior. This is actually a nice ending. Rounding out this list is Sonya of all people, who has a surprising ending. As you may have guessed, she takes down Kano because
he's Kano.
But she also annihilates the Red Dragon and the Black Dragon. Although I initially thought this would be challenging to quantify, I'm just gonna say that she eliminated all known members of each clan from the original timeline. That includes Dagon, Mavado, and Suhao of the Red Dragon, and Kano, Cabal, Kira, Cobra, Jarek, Tazia, Tremor, and No Face for the Black Dragon. I'm sure both groups had henchmen, but I've tallied 11 for Sonya using Blaze's power. Before getting to the final feed and updated leaderboard, I'd like to introduce a little segment called the Top 6 What the F Endings in MK Armageddon. After reviewing every single one of them, I found some that I couldn't proceed past without discussing. Kano transforms into a human-dragon hybrid that I really wish we had a visual of. This is also probably a reference to this scene in Conquest mode.
Seems they're trying to create real red dragons. They've been able to create a hybrid of man and lizard, using their own clan members as test subjects.
Where were they going with this? Female Chameleon's ending explains that rather than merely putting an end to Shao Kahn, she turns him and his allies into raptors destined to serve her for as long as they live. It's interesting to me because trying to picture Shao Kahn as a raptor makes the imagination run wild.
Welcome to die.
Noob Saibot's ending provides an odd yet poetic clash of consciousness between Noob and Sub-Zero within Noob. The two fought, but neither won, and what emerged was, quote,
something new.
That's the craziest cliffhanger that I can recall. Let me know what you think this could mean in the comments. Quan Chi gets absolutely dogged in his ending, where the Elder Gods transform him into a Kamidogu. Serena obtains Sub-Zero's freezing ability in her ending, which she uses to freeze Quan Chi in a block of ice where he will spend all eternity. And finally, Sub-Zero's ending is also insane. Blaze's power transforms him into an ice god, but he was also a false god. The Elder Gods proceed to send their champions to hunt down Sub-Zero and destroy him. And that was the top 6 what the f endings in MK Armageddon. Now here's a look at the final feed for Armageddon. And here's the updated leaderboard. Oh, by the way, I also added one elimination to each character that didn't get one, since that's evidently how obtaining Blaze's power works. Those, however, don't include Shao Kahn or Taven because canon. Now we have to move on to arguably the most tame mainline MK game in history. A game where we can finally see the dream matchup of Baraka versus Lex Luthor. Yeah, you know the game. Depending on who you ask, the writers included,
something that's often been asked of us is whether Aftermath's confrontation between Raiden and Liu Kang over whether or not to trust Shang Tsung
which directly calls back to a similar beat in Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe, is intended to make those events of MKDC canon? And the answer is yes.
The debate over whether MK vs. DC is canon or not is never ending. For the purposes of this video, I'm erring on the non-canon side. Even so, there aren't many deaths to report, but there are a few. Right off the rip, I'm crediting one elimination to each member of the roster, considering Dark Khan explodes at the end of every ladder run. Now let's cover those that happen in the story first. On the MK side, we have only Emperor Shao Kahn during the merger with Darkseid and then Dark Khan's eventual death, which revives Darkseid. On the DC side, we have Darkseid dying during the merger with Shao Kahn and then Dark Khan's eventual death, which happens to revive Shao Kahn. Also, shockingly, the only decapitation we get comes from the DC side when Deathstroke beheads this random civilian. Now to the arcade endings, and these are pretty uneventful. Sonya's ending reveals that a member of the Green Lantern perished during the world merge, so that's a death. Shang Tsung's ending depicts a deceased Tarkatan, whom he and Captain Marvel used to start an army of Tarkatans. Jax's ending reveals that he surrenders his humanity to go full robot once again, which to me counts as another metaphorical death since he likely won't retain his humanity. That's honestly everything I could possibly rationalize as a death in this game. Although, before continuing to the next game, I came across a few references that gave me that proud dad look.
In order to transform himself into a being of unstoppable power, Liu Kang need only shout, "Mortal Kombat." Both worlds will fall prey to this deadly alliance.
Here's the final and undoubtedly the weirdest feat of this entire video. The fun continues in MK9, where we get back to normal with some unexpected eliminations, deaths, and potentially more. Mortal Kombat 9 marked a new beginning for the series, essentially bringing back everyone who had died previously. However, the entire story remains canon. We have to venture into the arcade endings to see how everything shakes out in the non-canon. Right off the rip, I'm counting 31 deaths for Shao Kahn, one for each member of the roster because he dies at the end of the game and doesn't return until MK11. You might be thinking, well, why 31 and not 32 since there's 32 characters on the roster? But he doesn't die in one specific ending. Now let's get to those endings. Kicking things off with Scorpion, he cooks Quan Chi alive with the help of fallen Shirai Ryu's souls. I suppose I could count the souls as deaths, but there's way too many to count. Sub-Zero's ending is incredible, where he teams up with Scorpion to form a
deadly alliance
in his ending, where they each take down 4 initial attackers. Then, this animation repeats multiple times, and if I'm counting those initial 4, I counted 28 additional for Sub-Zero and 24 for Scorpion. Reptile adds another elimination to his record, melting the face off of this no-name Tarkatan. Mileena captures Shang Tsung's soul in her ending after harnessing Shao Kahn's dark magic, which absolutely counts as a death. Insane work out of Mileena here. Smoke gets the
Tomas Roboto
name drop in his ending, where we learn he died and returned as a vapor monster called a Nenra. He took down these 5 captors as this creature, and I'm counting those. Sector is just Sector in his ending, where he eliminates his dad, the Grand Master, and at least 1 Lin Kuei guard, potentially more, but I'm going with just 2 here. Jax's ending is another I initially added to the count because he taps into Kano's eye and terminates his consciousness. Then I saw Kano's ending where he pretty much becomes Skynet, so I'm just not gonna count anything here. Stryker doesn't die in his ending, but a random Tarkatan does, as indicated by this magazine. Shang Tsung's ending doesn't have a death per se, but it sets up Liu Kang as a villain, and one only Shang Tsung could conquer after a visit from Bo Raicho. A weird one for sure that I had to mention, but no confirmed deaths.
Vengeance would finally be his.
Baraka's ending throws a curveball, which ties directly back to me counting 31 deaths for Shao Kahn instead of 32. The reason being that Baraka eliminates Shao, but it's really Shang Tsung morphed into Shao. So there you go, Shao Kahn lives in one ending at the very least. Cyber Sub-Zero probably gets the award for the most insane ending in this game. Not a single word is spoken in this cutscene where he pulls the Reptile Classic, at least I think so. Then we get Cyber Shao Kahn, which sounds ridiculous, but this is an angle I could get behind. In addition to counting one death for Shao Kahn, which I already counted, I suppose I should count one for Cyber Sub-Zero based purely on the eye test. Quan Chi's ending depicts him stealing this unnamed guy's soul before fighting Shinnok and the Brotherhood of Shadow, a group which Quan Chi revived. We then learn in a plot twist that he brought Shao Kahn back to life. Shinnok presumably dies in the ensuing fight, but we all know he can't really die, so I'm counting just one elim for Quan Chi and a revive. Venturing into the DLC characters, Scarlet is up first, and this is an absolute rampage. She first eliminates Shao Kahn while under Quan Chi's mind control. She then absorbs Shao Kahn's power through his blood, channeling that power to take down 15 members by my count of the Brotherhood of Shadow, and finally, Quan Chi himself. Kenshi might have the most effective ending from a narrative standpoint. His story begins with Shang Tsung posing as a man named Song, who guides him to the ancient sword known as Sento. Kenshi interacts with this sword of his ancient heritage, which led to his blindness. Shang Tsung soon reveals himself to be Song, who used Kenshi just to obtain the souls from Sento. In his ending, Kenshi joins the Outer World Investigation Agency in exchange for using a portal that would take him anywhere. He uses this portal to hunt down Shang Tsung and exact his vengeance, a repeat elimination from just a few games ago. Rain doesn't have any direct eliminations in his ending, but there are at least 3 deaths. This could be completely off base, but I'm pretty sure these 2 Shokan are Goro and Kintaro, which tells me this is probably Motaro. In this case, I'm adding one to Goro and another to Motaro. Guest character Freddy Krueger's ending is pretty underwhelming for a horror icon of his magnitude. In any case, he basically just murks this lady in an homage to the classic Nightmare on Elm Street poster. He can kick off this separate leaderboard for guest characters only. Last but not least, to appease the gods at Sony, Kratos does Kratos things in his arcade ending. After eliminating Shao Kahn, Kratos proceeds to save Earthrealm by destroying Sonya, Johnny Cage, and Baraka. I still don't quite understand how that saves Earthrealm, but in any case, that's 4 for the God of War. That covers all the deaths I could identify in MK9's non-canon universe. Here's a look at the final feed for MK9, which I will admit was a lot less exciting than I thought it would be. Still, there were some good ones in there. And here's the latest leaderboard update with Shang Tsung and Raiden still comfortably in first and second. Next, we have the final game we are covering that features actual Mortal Kombat characters, Mortal Kombat X. I'll explain why that's the case in a little bit. There are some surprises in here and more guest characters, so let's go. In the post-Shao Kahn NRS era, our heroes would turn their attention to Shinnok. However, since Shinnok can't die as confirmed in MK11, I will not be counting a single Shinnok elimination for any of these endings. Instead, the eliminations are up to the characters themselves. So let's venture into the non-canon world of Mortal Kombat X. Kung Lao kicks us off, who, despite his revenancy, yeah, I think I just made that up, finds his way back to the light side with Kung Jin's assistance. He then takes the life of this random Netherrealm monster, and probably these other ones too, but there's no visual confirmation, so this is just one. Jax appears alongside the combat kids in his ending, but again, taking a page out of Reptile's playbook, he presumably dies. But not before taking down Erron Black, who was the one to end him. A bullet to the heart is convincing enough for me, so that's 1 for Jax and 1 for Erron Black. We have back-to-back deaths for Jax, but this time it's in Sonya's ending. This one is probably one of the more depressing endings I can recall, apart from maybe Li Mei's in Deadly Alliance. Sonya has a nightmare in which Kano forces her to choose between Jax and Cassie to save. She picks Cassie, and upon waking up, Johnny tells her that Jax was assassinated. Absolutely terrible in every sense of the word. I think it's safe to assume this ties directly in with Jax's ending with Erron Black being the assassin, so I'm not going to count it as a separate death or elimination. Kenshi's ending depicts him and Takeda on their quest to avenge Kenshi's wife and Takeda's mother Sushin's death. Interestingly enough, they encounter Boas Vert's favorite character Taven, encased in stalagmite.
Enjoying the view.
Who most of you should know as Dagon's bro. Joining the crew, Kenshi, Takeda, and Taven hunt down and eliminate Dagon to avenge Sushin. Katana's ending is a tough one to call because it takes us all the way back to Armageddon of all things, but it provides an alternate narrative where Katana destroys Shao Kahn and the realms live in peace. She then awakens from this vision to learn she's still a Revenant. So, is this an actual timeline that happened? Does this count as the same elimination I counted for her in MK9? These are the questions I don't have the answer to, so I'm gonna pass on this one. Next is Shinnok, and this one is a throwback for those familiar with the series' extensive lore. In his ending, Shinnok revives the One Being, whose destruction way back when created both the Kamidogu and the realms. Following his revival, the One Being consumes 4 Elder Gods and presumably Shinnok as well, because that's probably how it works. I'm also counting 3 here for Shinnok, as I believe Goro, Sonya, and Kotal Kahn all perish. Erron Black's ending has always been one of my favorites, and I suppose it could be considered partly canon. Those of you who watched part 2 of my MK Iceberg series might remember the theory that Erron Black took down Abraham Lincoln for Shang Tsung. Although it's obviously never confirmed to be the former president, Erron does get one elimination here and proceeds to wipe all 4 combat kids with ease. That makes 5 total for the Outworld mercenary.
Monster kill.
Next is Ermac, and his ending is about as depressing as his role in the main story. After conquering Shinnok, he basically wanders aimlessly until a naked and admittedly yoked Shang Tsung appears and drains Ermac of his souls. I'm gonna call this one elimination for Shang and an involuntary revive for Ermac, the first of this entire video. Whether direct or not, Takeda's ending ties in with Kenshi's, following a similar formula. The father-son duo set out to avenge Sushin's death, where we see Takeda earn his only elimination on this random red dragon guy. The two then rescue Taven from the depths of obscurity. Cassie Cage's ending brought me to another level of anger. After defeating Shinnok, Raiden instructs her to locate and neutralize Shang Tsung, which she does.
Hold up.
I am Shujinko.
Only it's not Shang Tsung, it's actually Shujinko. Yes, the same lovable protagonist many of us grew to love in Deception is now dead. I'm not sure why this was the ending, but yeah, it's fine. Whatever. Ferritor's non-canon journey sees the metamorphosis of Ferra, while Tor is left to wither away and die. That's pretty sad, and I believe the only death by old age thus far. Rip Tor. There are a few deceased in Raiden's ending, but I have no clue who to attribute them to. So with the main roster covered, let's hit the top tier DLC lineup MKX provided us, beginning with Goro. The Shokan essentially take over Outworld, which leads to the deaths of Baraka, Melina, Ferritor, Tanya, Rain, and Kotal Kahn. Although perhaps there's some doubt that Goro ended all 7, this image tells me everything I need to know. A seriously ridiculous run by the destroyer of $500 sunglasses.
Unstoppable.
Tanya's ending is pretty effed up. She flees Outworld forces with Rain following Melina's execution. She then finds she has no further use for Rain, so she betrays him by turning him into Kotal and company, who proceed to burn him alive. Although she may not have done the deed herself, I'm shamefully attributing Rain's death to her. Absolute coward on this one. Triborg's ending is metal as hell. They destroy the special forces right off the rip, taking down Cassie, Sonya, and I'm pretty sure this is Jackie back here. They probably murk these soldiers as well, but it's hard to say for sure. Triborg then revives the Cyber Lin Kuei and the Takunin simultaneously. That's Aura.
The Cyber Initiative lives on.
The first of 3 guest characters we're covering in this game is Crystal Lake's own Jason Voorhees. His ending shows him brutalizing 3 summer camp teens before approaching Revenant Liu Kang, who offers a position to fight for the Netherrealm. Jason stands on business as an independent worker, choking Liu Kang to death with his own entrails. Next is Predator, who somehow manages to one-up Jason as our second guest character. The opening cinematic alone confirms he eliminated Raiden, Fujin, Johnny Cage, and Sub-Zero. Later on, he decimates Melina, Goro, and finally Kotal Kahn, making him the
Apex Predator.
Rampage.
The Xenomorph alien is one of the tougher ones to assess. For one, the Xenomorph drags Reptile away here, and while there's no confirmation, I feel like it's more than likely that he died shortly after or later after a chestburster emerged from him. Still, I'm not gonna count it because there's no visual confirmation. Later on, the Xenomorphs are seen with a Shokan strung up to the wall but still alive. The species then collectively invades Outworld, but there's no proof anyone died here. So while I know characters did die, I can't count any of them. The final DLC and guest character we have to cover in this game is Jedediah Sawyer, otherwise known as Leatherface. We see a pair of deceased Special Forces members here, followed by Cassie Cage, whose face Leatherface removes for use later, maybe? Here's the final feed for MKX. And the updated leaderboard. Now we head to MK11, where everything is canon, as confirmed in Mortal Kombat 1. So things are about to get pretty interesting. Mortal Kombat 11 is an interesting case because, as I mentioned, MK1 later confirmed that every single arcade ending is canon in some sense.
Where there once was one timeline, there are now many. Each new timeline represents a different possible outcome of that battle. In mine, I became Time's Keeper. In yours, it was you. In others, it could be Jade, Sindel, even Kano. The possibilities are endless.
So I just can't count those for the purposes of this list. I will do something separate for those at the end of this segment, but the only ones that I can and will cover are the guest characters, since they are never canon to the actual game's universe. Let's start with a bang, quite literally, as the Joker ends Kronika, Liu Kang, Raiden, and Ninja Mine, which is just insanity all around. He says he
finished just about everyone worth finishing in Earthrealm and Outworld, even lovable old Netherrealm.
But again, no visual evidence, so let's proceed to Order Realm, where we see a few different characters earning eliminations, including an additional for Joker alongside Melina slaying Hotaru, and Havoc and Suhao taking out a couple of randoms. RoboCop is next, and he has just one here, eliminating Kronika to gain control of the Hourglass. The same goes for Rambo, who viciously beheads Kronika before seeing the various wars across timelines, at which point he decides to just go home. Spawn's ending throws a slight curveball where we don't even see Kronika dead, but instead secured to the stone structure presumably in Hell. There are no actual visual eliminations here, but I will count one for Spawn onto Kronika. MK11 concludes with the Terminator, who also eliminates Kronika before self-terminating, as this is the only solution to the inevitable war between humans and machines. He proceeds to throw himself into the Sea of Blood, which is infinite, so he probably never actually dies, or at least not for a long time. Also, I forgot to mention the deaths of Goro, Kenshi, Kano, and Ermac in the Crypt, which most would agree is non-canon. And the thousands of intro dialogues that reference deceased characters which may or may not be canon.
What happened to Tanya?
For her treason, Kodo killed her.
You face the same punishment, Raiden.
I don't know, guys. Here's the final feed for MK11, which is somewhat underwhelming and occupied almost entirely by guest characters. Also, here's the updated non-canon leaderboard and the guest leaderboard. If we were counting the MK11 endings as not canon, which we're not, but if we were, this is how everything would have shaken out. Shang slays Kronika and takes all of these souls, Shao slays Kronika, Takeda slays this person, and then Shao Kahn slays Takeda. Frost presumably slays Raiden, Sub-Zero, Kronika, Aaron Black, Johnny Cage, and one unidentifiable person here. Nightwolf slays Kronika, and then this female Nightwolf slays Kano. Johnny slays Kronika and revives Sonya. Sonya slays Kronika and this giant monster, Cassie slays Kronika and revives Sonya, Jax slays Kronika and delivers a shockingly powerful message.
You can have everything. Anyone who says you can't needs to dream bigger.
Scorpion slays Kronika and this other titan, Noob slays Kronika, Katana, Scorpion, Sub-Zero, and Liu Kang, and pays homage to Oppenheimer.
I have had many names. Now I am become death, destroyer of worlds.
Baraka slays Kronika and Raiden, while Goro slays this guy. Raiden slays Kronika. Jackie slays Kronika and changes time to make sure her father's life would be better in the long term, which sadly means she'd never exist.
I know you'll never hear this, but... Goodbye, Dad. I love you.
Kuai Liang slays Kronika and Bihan slays these two random monsters. Kano spares Kronika's life. Cabal slays Kronika, then revives her and gives the hourglass back to her before slaying Kano, Jax, Sonya, and a few others here. He then gets together with Serena and has kids. Liu Kang slays Kronika, Katana slays Kronika, Kung Lao slays Kronika, erases the great Kung Lao's loss to Goro, and then slays Onaga. Jade slays Kronika, Cetrion, and Shinnok. Scarlet slays Kronika and Baraka slays Katana. Aaron Black slays Kronika. Devora slays Kronika, Katana, and maybe this is Jade here. Kotal Khan slays Kronika. Shiva slays Kronika. Gira slays Kronika and then sacrifices himself. Collector slays Kronika. Sindel slays Kronika. Melina slays Kronika, Katana, and this dude who's just hanging. Cetrion slays Kronika. Fujin slays Kronika and recreates the Last Supper. Rain slays Kronika, Taven, and Dagon. And that's, I think, it. Now we move to the final game of this journey. The incredibly polarizing... Alright, it's time for the main event, but I'm sad to say we cannot cover a single MK character in this game either. Unfortunately, many of these endings may or may not be canon. We honestly won't know until the next game drops, hopefully within the next 5 years, if we're lucky. I think the tricky thing is trying to figure out whether all characters should get credit for 2 eliminations because of how the tower endings play out and the end of the game plays out. The way these play out make it seem as though all could be canon, so we are only addressing the guest characters. Right off the rip, I think it only makes sense to credit each with 2 eliminations, one for Titan Shang Tsung and the other for Titan Quan Chi. Now let's get to the individual endings. Beginning with Omni-Man, he straight up murks Shang Tsung with a fist through the abdomen while Liu Kang already lays deceased on the ground. He then returns to this timeline with fellow Viltrumites and proceeds to take down roughly 6 more characters, who I think might be Tremor, Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Shujinko, Sonya, and Serena, while Conquest eliminates this Shokan who could be Goro. This next one is really difficult to make out since I can't quite identify the main character, but based on the voice acting, it's probably Peacemaker.
I was way over my head with Eclipse. I mean, the dude's a goddamn god.
He starts his ending by taking down DC villain Eclipso, who proceeds to cast a spell sending Peacemaker to Liu Kang's universe. Unfortunately, that's where the Never Seen 17, the last real champion's run ends, as although it's implied, we never see him eliminate Shao, Reiko, Shang, or Quan Chi. The evil SOB and leader of the Seven, also known as Homelander, follows next and begins his ending by lasering 11 of these Netherrealm demons. He then proceeds through the portal to Liu Kang's new era, where more chaos ensues. Homelander absolutely demolishes Kung Lao, then Liu Kang, and probably everyone else, but we only deal in absolutes here. Not really, but no evidence, so I'm counting 13 total for this psychopath. Moving to Kombat Pack 2, we begin with a character I was admittedly skeptical about, but the narrative changed quickly. That being Ghostface. The Woodsboro slasher begins his endeavor by heading to the new era. Ghostface then livestreams his own POV, where we can see 4 deceased before he finishes off the woman we saw at the beginning. This is where things get interesting because we know he actually eliminates Johnny in one of his 2 fatalities. But Johnny's clearly playing a different game here. I figured that makes sense to count 1 for Ghostface regardless since the fatality isn't canon. Also, I'm not counting the 7 stab spree on the game within the ending within the game. Sadly, despite having a great ending, Conan has 0 confirmed eliminations, except for Titan Shang Tsung and Quan Chi, of course. So let's bring this journey home with the Liquid Metal T-1000 Terminator. The T-1000 starts its ending with a double kill on Kung Lao and Johnny Cage. I'm not going to count Madame Bo because although the machine mimics her, that requires only a touch and she looks okay jumping onto the machine here. The T-1000 then obliterates Sector and later Bihan to cap things off, making that 4 overall.
Overkill.
With all that covered, here is the final feed for Mortal Kombat 1. I wish we could have counted more for MK1, but that's just how everything played out. Huge props to Homelander and Omni-Man for slaying out. Now let's take one final look at the overall scoreboard to see who took the top spot. Sure enough, it's Shang Tsung in first with 11,214,000,008 eliminations. Followed by Raiden in the number 2 spot with 5,477,011 eliminations. And Blaze rounds out the top 3 with 58 eliminations. In case you don't agree that the millions of eliminations earned by Shang and Raiden should count, here's what the leaderboard would have looked like removing those and reshuffling everything. Now let's have one last look at the final guest character leaderboard, where we have Homelander in first with 15 eliminations, Omni-Man in second with 10 eliminations, and Ghostface rounding out the top 3 with 8 eliminations. And last but not least, here's one final look at the almighty non-canon death board. Unsurprisingly, Blaze landed in first with 60 deaths, Shao Kahn took second with 45 deaths, and Dark Khan hung in there till the very end, earning a respectable 24 deaths in just one game. That just about covers every single death in the non-canon Mortal Kombat universe. At least by my count. I know it's definitely not perfect and probably didn't make sense at times, but this at least gives you an idea of what occurred outside of the main storyline. I feel most tower endings fade over time, but I think they're worth remembering because all characters get to shine in one way or another, except for Reptile. And Baraka. And some others.
You killed her.
This video took me much longer than most since it's a lot of content to digest. I mean, I had literal spreadsheets counting eliminations and deaths because I was getting insanely confused at times. Now is your time to tell me what I missed, what I included that I shouldn't have, and everything in between. Bonus points if it's respectful. Anyway, if you made it this far into the video, comment mocap down below. You know, for science. Also, let me know what surprised you the most and what didn't surprise you at all with everything covered. I do have channel memberships turned on if you'd like to further support my degenerate Mortal Kombat habits, but obviously no pressure. And there's this new hype thing that I know nothing about, but apparently it can push the video to more people, so do that if you feel like it. As always, until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll be back with another video soon.